Hi, I'm teacher Ellie. You probably know me from my ManyCam videos for VIP Kid and also my quick teaching tips. Today I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm talking to VIP Kid mentor Shannon Mabry, who really is amazing. If you don't know her, um, I'm shocked because she's very helpful on Fresh Desk and also in her Facebook group, which I've linked to below. It really is probably the best VIP Kid Facebook group out there. So keep watching. She has some really helpful things to say. All right, uh, fellow YouTube friends. Today I have with me here Shannon Mabry, the famous Shannon Mabry. She is, if you have been living in a hole and don't know who she is, she is a VIP Kid mentor extraordinaire. She is omnipresent on Fresh Desk, helping answer all sorts of questions. She is a mentor, which means she reviews classes and evaluates them. She also is the administrator of the best VIP Kid group on Facebook, which was recently corroborated by Cindy herself. So that's, awesome. And she's also a veteran of VIP Kid. She's on her third contract, which makes her like, I don't know, the the
like,
all-knowing.
like a unicorn.
Exactly. That's exactly it, Shannon. All right, so today we're going to talk to Shannon about some things, about what makes a VIP Kid teacher a good teacher and what VIP Kid is looking for um, in their teachers. So, Shannon, why don't you just go ahead and kind of start talking to me about what a good teacher looks like to you?
Okay. Well, thank you for the interview. It's pretty, and the hype up. That was nice.
Well,
Um,
it's all true.
it's not hype if it's true, right? And it's
Right,
just that.
exactly.
um, there's a lot of things that go into when you first start with VIP Kid. Training is 1,000 miles long, but still doesn't cover everything. But there's a few things that the company specifically looks for in their teachers, and it's something that also the parents are looking for too. So things that stand out to me immediately are your attention to your student. One of the biggest issues with teachers will be if they're distracted. Uh, Coming from
So
someone who,
talk to me a little bit about that. Sorry, let me
oh, you're
interrupt for a
fine.
second. So, I'm having a really hard time understanding what distraction looks like. Like, are we talking about typing notes on the side
This is
about
what
your student?
distraction looks like.
So, actual phone use during class.
Yeah. Um,
Wow. Okay.
but being distracted to the point where it's obvious that you're not concentrating on the student or concentrating on the lesson. Other things that might constitute distraction, maybe missing opportunities to correct errors. There's a good chance that if you're not listening, then, or you're distracted, I don't know, you're on Facebook at the same time, or you're on Skype, or you're whatever, you're checking your phone, because I've seen it quite a few times. All of those things, people think that they can get away looking sneaky, like, oh yeah, I can do this and I can do that at the same time, but it takes the attention away from actually listening for the errors that they need to correct. So, if you're off doing something else that's taking your attention away from the student, parents usually notice that sort of stuff, and it's a big deal. It really is, because it just looks bad for you. It looks bad on you, really.
And this is something that you've actually seen happen.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I,
Yeah.
I do type my notes for the student on the screen just because I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it looks a little less distracting than writing them. And if I don't type them in the moment, I forget.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't feel like that's a problem. It's like
It
the
depends on
phone.
how you approach it. Personally, I have my own way of taking notes, because I take notes during class, because I'm the kind of person that leaves feedback like 11 hours later, just
Right.
because. But I'm on my third one of these, So every class, I just write notes over here. But the key is to make sure that whenever you're doing something that might look like it's distracting, prove that it's not. So for example, I spend a lot of time with this pen in my hand in the camera screen, right? So I'll say, oh, right. And then I'll look down. Then I'll bring the pen right back up to my face. It's an obvious you're writing. You're not looking down to text or whatever, distracted, but that as soon as that pen comes back, the parent sees, oh, there's a pen. And then they do something. And then the pen's back. And they do something else. Obviously, you're taking notes. So sometimes it's important to make whatever you're doing almost obvious. Oh, they're not texting or, whatever people might be doing that kind of gets them just off in la la land, not paying attention to their student.
That's a good idea. I hadn't thought about having a pen in view. Great.
It works. I've never had a complaint about, and I take notes every class.
Yeah, I can't not. I just don't have
No.
At 3 o'clock in the morning, I just don't have all of my brain cells.
I can't. I don't know how you guys do it. It's too early out there. Way too early.
Okay, so what else? What else are some really important big factors in good teaching?
I guess you could just say it's part of what you just said, good teaching. I know that I didn't come from a brick and mortar system. My experience was in tutoring, so my experience was a little bit different than some teachers, but at the same time, we have a lot of teachers who did not come, they were the same as me. They did not come from the typical classroom environment. Sometimes it takes a little bit to actually understand how to teach online. There are a lot of interesting things about the dynamic between a student through the camera. I know that when the company comes out on a regular basis, it might even be every Monday, with some sort of teaching tip, which, I suggest that everyone should be well acquainted with the update. If you're not reading the update, one day that's going to come back to bite you in the butt, because there's always something on that update that has something to do with the following week that probably has to do with you probably going to get an IT issue because you forgot to change websites or something ridiculous like that. But learning how to become a good teacher. I know that it took me a little while to get super comfortable with techniques. And sometimes it can look very apparent, like you don't know what you're doing. So sometimes I would suggest watching yourself. Watch a video of yourself. I know some people feel really uncomfortable watching themselves teach, but it's going to improve your teaching because you can self-analyze what you're doing. Are you paying close attention to your student? Do you look distracted? How do you respond to the student? Do you cut them off? That's a big one. They really are anti-cut your student off. It doesn't go well, and it kind of discourages the student to talk. We want them to talk. The idea is 30-70. That's what the company is reaching for. 30% output from us and 70% output from the student. Of course, it can be pretty hard, but it's really, really important that you stop talking. Just stop. From someone who talks all the time, that's a tough one. Trust me. Sometimes I have to be like, whoa, Shannon, stop. But
well, talk to me about your tips for getting the kids to talk and getting that 70-30 output, because honestly, well, in some of the lower levels, I think, is it correct that they've said in some of the lower levels 50-50 is adequate?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
which
but even
probably
then,
to just repeating.
yeah, because even then I find myself repeating the phrase I want them to say at least once, and then they just say it once, so I'm still struggling.
Yeah, I guess in that instance, it comes down to figuring out how to decrease the amount of things that you're saying in order to get more from them. So, for example, one of the things that I do with all of my kids is when I want them to say a full sentence, I do this. Full sentence, right? It's just this kind of motion that I've gotten used to, and I've done it for months and months and months. I don't even know when I started doing it. But the interesting thing is it works really well for your regulars. This kind of ties into some gesture things that I talk about in my TPR workshop. the TPR and demonstration workshop. When you demonstrate certain things, your students get really acquainted and accustomed to them. You know, it's kind of like they get used to your humor over time. I got to the point where, for example, I have one student who she struggled with sentences forever. It was like 2 months. And so every single time, I'm still like touching my mouth. It's like I'm in class. What? Can you hear me? Every single time I asked her to say a full sentence because she never would, which is another thing. If you don't require your students to always speak in full sentences, you will see that affect their learning. It's a requirement by the company. You have to do that. And parents do not like it when you don't. It's one of those things that just, it's bad teaching. If you allow them to answer, you know, your level 4 should never answer dog, whatever. That's ridiculous. It just shouldn't be like that. You have to make them say it. But over time, the thing is that with her, after having every single time I would say full sentence, and then I would say this, do it full sentence, I want a full sentence. After about a month and a half, 2 months, I didn't have to say anything anymore. So I could look at her and she would repeat. She'd say, I'd be like, what is this? She'd say, dog. And I'd look at her and I'd say, and she says, this is a dog. Well, look, I said something, but I didn't actually have to say anything.
Right.
So it was kind of a way to decrease the amount of speaking.
That's great. Yeah, because I found the same thing with some of my regulars. They just, but usually I end up having to start them on the sentence. I usually have to say this. I don't ever say no, but this,
yeah.
You know.
And that's one of those awesome keys, is that and the finger thing. The finger thing works really well. Yeah, whenever you want a specific sentence, especially from your younger ones, sometimes they're thinking of 2 or 3 sentences and they don't want to get it wrong. So they don't give you anything. So you say, this, oh, what is it? This is a dog. Okay, we know there's 4 words in the sentence. Starts with this. Oh, that's what she wants. This is a dog. Okay, now I got it. I got it, teacher.
But this I love. I love this. And that's something I think I could use like tomorrow.
It works really well. I mean, they just know. They just know what you want. And you can train your students with different kinds of things to decrease that amount. Additionally, I would say for upper level students, I don't read. I don't even care if the teacher directions say teacher reads. If my student has the ability to read and I have the time, they read. The only time I ever read is if the student does not have the ability to do so because they're in the wrong level, or we're running out of time and I need to read it a little faster. Otherwise, they read. My students even read the questions. Like, that's just kind of, I know that the idea is you ask a question, they give the answer, then they ask the question, you give the answer. Well, I personally have never found that effective. It's awkward that we're repeating the same question twice. I just personally don't like it. So my students, I say, what question? Circle it. They read the question, and then I say, and then they read the answer. I said 2 words on the slide, and they said everything else. So
that's great. That's really great. Yeah, I did that with a student this morning. You know, like she was Anna and I was Dino. We were swapping roles. Yeah. And so, you know, it would have she ended up reading the questions that I should have been reading anyway.
They get confused anyway. I think the only time that I ever do it is I have a couple of boys who like to do the funny voices. Most of my kids hate that. Like, they're like, no. I'm like, no, funny voice. And they're like, this is the question. No, funny voice. This is the question. Fine, we're not doing funny voices. But I have a few who like to, they like to do stupid stuff, and then I'll get into it with them. So that's just a fun aspect instead of.
Well, and you bring up a really good point. You know, that's something that's in the teacher directions. And how flexible are the teacher directions with Emcees? Like, I mean, how playful can you be with them if you're still hitting the directive?
You can be pretty playful. I think what you just said is the key. Hitting that objective that's in the slide. So, like, one of the things that I see sometimes that is an example of kind of straying from the directions, but at the same time it's a kind of an issue is when teachers will switch CVC activities. For example, the CVC activity will be, one will be listening and the other one will be speaking. So like it'll be the teacher, the direction says teacher say it, and then the student finds it. And the next slide will be teacher circles and the student says it. Those are two different kinds of objective. They do two different things, but sometimes teachers decide to just do all of them the exact same way, and that misses the mark. So if you see what the objective of the slide is, what's the point? What exactly are we learning, and how are we supposed to learn it at this point? And you adjust the way that you teach it, but it still hits that exact objective for that specific slide, because it has to do with the flow of the entire class. So it's important that you do it in a certain way, because they'll probably end up seeing it that way on their assessment. And you know, it's all done for a purpose. So as long as you're meeting that objective, it's okay to veer off a little bit from the teacher directions, just as long as you're not missing things. If you jump off the teacher directions and just go into a tangent someplace else and miss it completely, then you've got an issue, because you have missed part of the lesson. You didn't execute it correctly. But otherwise, as long as you're having a good time, some specific activities don't work well with certain students. If the activity doesn't work well with your student, change it. That's just is what it is. It's kind of like a reward system. Some reward systems do not appeal to certain kids. I do believe that you can make any reward system appeal to students, but you have to be a certain kind of person to do that, which means you have to have a lot of life. You have to be a lot of something to make bananas interesting to a 13-year-old. But I could figure out how to do it.
Well, and you have to know the student well. You kind of have to have a relationship already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't, but that's the idea. Flexibility is cool, but it's all has to do with teaching that student. If you have the student in mind, if you have their, if it's not about you, I think that's one of the things that makes a good VIPKID teacher is someone who's selfless. It might sound weird, but you can sometimes see selfishness in a class.
Talk to me about that. I'm really interested in this topic. So
I think it just has to do with how someone approaches a topic, how patient they are. If you're lacking patience, which comes across very easily. If you're lacking patience, you can hear it. I know sometimes myself, maybe if I'm not feeling the best, or if something seems like if I know my student really, really well, and I know that they should be able to get this, but there's some reason why they're not getting it, I might start to sound a little impatient. It's come on. You know this, what's going on? But in a way, I think that's more just me getting, that's just me like talking to a little sibling or something like that. But, if we don't know a student very well, getting snippy with them, short with them can be really bad. And, encouraging speaking is not done through negativity. So you're not going to get your student to interact with you if you're using the word no all the time, or if you're cutting the student off in the middle of their sentences.
Stay tuned for parts 2 and 3, where Shannon talks more about whether you need to be worried about being let go, whether you should wear orange, and other really important VIPKID teacher topics. Thanks for watching.